With the 4-cylinder Ecoboost Mustang, Ford begins a new era for the pony car.
It has a new engine, independent rear suspension, and an improved interior.
But with the starting price around $25,000, it also has a lot of strong competition.
So we gathered some of our greatest hits to see if the Mustang should join the club.
So here I am in the 2015 Ecoboost Mustang, which is Ford marketing's exciting way of saying, hey, look at us, we made a turbo. This is the first 4-cylinder Mustang since that SVO they made in the 80s, so it's been a while. However, the world has changed a lot, so of course 4-cylinder turbos are what everybody's making right now. The problem with the 25 to 30 grand price point is that that's actually gotten pretty competitive. There's a lot of really good stuff for enthusiasts in that world now.
You know, there's something that marketing teams do that kind of bugs me. And I mean marketing teams for car companies. They'll bring out a new model, whatever that is, and call it all new, brand new car. In a lot of cases, it's not even very much changed. That's not the case for the new Mustang. The new Mustang is entirely new, but we've also brought some competitors.
We brought some of our very favorites, in fact, a lot of people's favorites, but of course those aren't the only options. You could say, hey, where's the GTI? You could say, where's the Focus ST?
And you know what? There's other cars that we could choose in Europe and Asia that we don't get in the US. That's because the Mustang now is truly a world car.
But the ones that we brought are the ones that pretty much everybody has said, these are great in their class. The FRS is the obvious good competitor in inexpensive rear-wheel drive, so it's got to go here with the Ford. The Fiesta ST, you could argue the Focus is the better match and you'd be right on price, except most people agree the Fiesta ST is more fun to drive than its bigger brother. And the WRX brings the all drive wheels to the party question and asks how much car can you get for this price point, and the answer is, well, a lot. Now this EcoBoost has everything. As spec'd right here, this is a $38,000 car. Now, I cannot think of a good reason to buy a nearly $40,000 4-cylinder Mustang, especially considering that the V8 starts at about $32,000, $33,000. So what are you doing? Well, that's because this car has everything imaginable.
And even though we have initially tracked this car and the 5-liter GT, it's not until we get on roads like this to really understand this car and decide, is it usable? Can it fit my life? What's added to this is the level of refinement that Ford has done. I mean, yeah, you can own that V8 Mustang and enjoy it, but generally speaking, the rest of it has been rental car and associated rental car quality interior. Not any longer. I have been waiting for an interior for a Mustang that looks like this. As soon as you sit down, feel the seats, feel the materials, you can tell your money is going a long way here.
This is the best interior of this group. The materials feel the best, it looks the most interesting, it feels like a premium place to be compared to everything else here. If you got in this Mustang right after the FRS and someone told you this car is $8,000 more, you'd look around and go, yeah, I can see that.
Now you hear a lot of complaints about the FRS interior, and I will acknowledge it's not amazing. But it's not nearly as stark and bad as some people make it out to be. There's great seats here, and for a car that's around $25,000, it's fine.
It's amazing how similar the intentions of the FRS are to that EcoBoost Mustang. I mean, you know, you've got the fold-down rear seat, you've got the mostly useless +2 back seats. It is a very similar idea. In spite of this being the largest car here, you don't really have any more legroom. This is still every bit a 2-seater like the FRS is. The Fiesta ST actually feels like a more usable car than this, certainly for 4 people. It just feels cheap. Now, this car is almost $10,000 cheaper than that EcoBoost Mustang, and you can tell the moment that you sit down why that's the case. The economy car roots are definitely on display here. Now, this doesn't have the Recaros. They are great seats. I will fully acknowledge that.
It feels the least expensive. But so does the Subaru.
This is a very usable interior and has great back seats. It's just not sexy at all, which is not really what Subarus are known for. But there is a lot of tech. You can get any option you want. So it loses out to the Ford on presentation style and the feel and the quality of the materials, but it wins on usability and ease of use. This Mustang definitely feels like a better, more expensive place to be. There are a few oddities, like the speedometer says ground speed. What are we flying here? Do we think this is an airplane? I think that's a little ridiculous. This has these 4 GT style switches for your drive mode and your steering mode, etc. Except these unfortunately feel awfully plastic.
The overall interior is nice, and also you've got to think the steering wheel's got to go on the right side of the car too, so it's got to be perfectly symmetrical, right? I like the design. There's a bit more style on the exterior of this car. There's a lot more details on this car and a lot more refinement. Pretty complicated taillights. This is some surfaces coming together that you've got to resolve to still have good proportions. Ford had to be careful in still making it a Mustang, having good flavor, and I think they have. I think this car is going to look good for a long time, and they've left themselves room to evolve it even more and make it fresh and crisp.
I've talked about the styling on the FRS before as being close to everything I want it to be. But the truth is, all it really needs is different wheels than the stock wheels. I mean, even these TRD wheels have improved the look of the car immensely.
The little upgrades and tweaks to the car, the lower stance, the exhaust pipes, I think this car stands out even more.
I hate to say this, but the WRX is a Toyota Corolla with a hood scoop. It just is. It's not an attractive car. It's not a car you go, I want to buy that just based on looks. It's a sleeper. Now, if you like sleepers, they've done that really well. Even the Fiesta, which has kind of a weird proportion about it, suggests some purpose in its ST shape. And it isn't for everybody, but it's one of those cars that I feel like you don't notice unless you're an enthusiast, and then you go, oh look, Fiesta ST. So here we are back with our friend, the Fiesta ST. Now, the obvious question is, why not bring the Focus ST? Isn't it a closer match? And while it is in price, the thing is, the Fiesta ST, most people agree, is just more fun to drive. The fun for price of the Fiesta ST is almost impossible to beat on the market right now. More car journalists have bought the Fiesta ST in the last couple of years than any car I can think of. That's pretty much the biggest endorsement I can give it, is the fact that those of us that drive a lot of things love this car.
It's not a party trick. Just ask any owner. This car does things you have to laugh out loud. You just can't believe the car does these things. I mean, how can you deny the car that makes you laugh as soon as you start driving it? Some of these other cars, you have to dig pretty deep. You have to find it. You have to go after it. But this one, it's just as soon as you dip into the throttle, you're giggling like an idiot. And even though you think, all right, down on power, comparatively, compared to the rest of the field here, that's okay because it's the lightest, it's the smallest, and it's also the least expensive.
The minute anyone buys this car, they instantly tune it. So I know some of you are already saying, yeah, but then when you do, I get that, I know that. And in fact, it was very hard for us to find a stock Fiesta ST for this test. In the stock form, it is the least powerful and the slowest of the cars in this test. But because of the lightweight and because of the turbo punch in the mid-range, this feels like a really quick car. In fact, it feels significantly faster than the FRS because of that turbo punch.
Ah yes, the FRS. It's like an old friend. We've driven this car so many times. I'm really, really mixed now about this car. It's kind of funny because my initial reactions to it were great, and it still is. This car is fine when you're up to speed and you're hanging out at revs above 5,000. I'm not sure I want to do anything else but that in the FRS.
Now, no surprise, in this company, it's hard for the FRS to not feel slow. And there is that issue right here in the mid-range. The torque band has that dip in it between 3,000 and 4,000 RPMs. That is noticeable compared to these other cars. Right about the time that they're starting to really get good punch going is the place where the FRS dies away and kind of becomes breathless for a minute because, of course, this is the only non-turbo in this gathering. Now, this FRS has the TRD performance package on it. That means slightly stiffer springs. It's got a stiffer rear sway bar, a little bit different ride height about it, and this terrible TRD exhaust. That's right, terrible exhaust.
What Toyota has done is add this exhaust that's unbelievably boomy and nauseating at high speeds. I don't like the car with this exhaust on.
I don't remember ever being in an FRS and being annoyed by the exhaust note like I am in this car. So save yourself the money and don't even do that.
I love how everybody goes 80 miles an hour in the rain on these straightaways. Doesn't matter if you're in an Astro van or an FRS, everybody just hammers through here.
All the way to the floor, trying to go fast. Okay, all right, we got there. It just took a minute. Clearly the engine in this responds well to being turbocharged. I mean, it's proven in the new WRX. And you get in this car right after the WRX and you just wish for that turbo.
Yeah, the thing about the WRX is this turbo. More than any of these other cars we're driving, it comes on far sooner. It's the instant response that I love about this car. I want it to do something and it does it now.
Every time I hop back in the WRX, I'm struck by how eager it is. It and the Fiesta are tuned in such a way that they just feel just kind of primed and excited and let's go, we got to do something, this is going to be fun. The WRX is like an excited middle schooler. I mean, you kind of can't believe how excited they are. You keep kind of thinking, okay, calm down a little, I'm glad you're excited. That is the WRX all of the time. It's so excited to just go quickly.
It's that particular quality that I want to syndicate, that I want to have through all of these cars. It's only the WRX that really does it. When you get on this car, I mean, you really spank it hard, it scampers. I mean, this car gets with it. And that's what I love. That's the little angry, gnarly personality of the WRX.
One of the big surprises for me in this group is the fact that the WRX with all-wheel drive is lighter than the four-cylinder Mustang. I'm not entirely sure how that's even possible. I mean, this is 250 pounds lighter than that Mustang. That and this almost table-like torque curve make this car feel very light on its feet compared to that Mustang. And what's crazy is this is the fastest car here. Not only does that power plant feel quick, it is quick. This is the car that's putting down the best 0 to 60 sprint of this entire group. And again, it just makes me cry out, where is this engine in that FRS? This is honestly the easiest turbo engine to drive of this entire group.
I'm a Ford guy, but Mustangs were pretty much rental cars and the Mustang you should buy. I mean, the V6, and then if you're going to actually buy a Mustang, you of course get the GT. You get the V8 or the Boss or something else.
So interestingly, this four-cylinder Mustang is now the middle of the range. The V6 is now the rental car spec, and this four-cylinder has more power and more torque than that V6. Now it's 100 down in both from the V8.
It's got 310 horses. And usually we don't dwell on numbers too much. You've probably noticed that. But in this car, it's important because the Mustang represents not just power and how fast you can go or what you can do with this car. You've got to have some sort of number associated with it. People always ask, top speed, how fast is it, what's the horsepower, whatever. And they judge the car based on that number. To many, it's sacrilege, right? To put a four-cylinder in this thing? How could you, Ford? Why would you do this? And based on the weight of the car, you might dismiss it initially. And I admit, I kind of did too. Because I thought, well, if you're going to get a Mustang, just like always, just get the 5-liter V8. Well, it needed to step up the game in a way that now made it more appealing to buyers that never before would consider this car.
This is Ford's first twin-scroll turbo, and it's actually their most power-dense engine. They're very proud of that. There's power here. I just keep thinking about twice as much torque as that FRS. I mean, that's kind of undeniable right there. All the way up to Redline is still pulling well.
Now I feel like I'm really starting to understand this car, and admittedly, it's taken me a while to warm to it. The thing about this engine is, I haven't really felt the turbo until 4,500, 5,000. It's in the high end of the rev range, so that means you've got to drive it pretty hard to start extracting this goodness out of it. I think that's a good thing because it feels a lot more progressive than, say, the Subaru. Even though it's not as quick and it doesn't have as much power as the V8, it still has that feeling of the surge that a normally aspirated engine gives you. And the 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine doesn't let this car down, so don't be afraid. The 4-cylinder in a Mustang is now a good thing.
Considering what's being done to that little Fiesta ST, you know this car is going to be tuned like crazy. I mean, it's a 2.3 liter engine, so it's actually the largest engine we even have in this test. That Fiesta is only a 1.6. What is possible here? You know there will be a lot. There'll be people with the 500 and 600 horsepower 4-cylinder Mustangs. I don't know how well those will run, but you know they're coming if they don't exist already.
Here's my major criticism. It's the exhaust note. Actually, it's the engine note. It's thundering and boomy and a little unpleasant at times, especially on the freeway.
And the problem is that it's very resonant. I mean, at certain RPMs, it just kind of shakes through all the body panels. Now, the FRS does that as well, but in spite of this being a significantly nicer interior, it can't escape it any more than the FRS can. This is my second favorite gearbox once you're moving. I prefer the gearbox in the FRS, but this actually has very easy throws. It's easy to interact with, very simple to find. The clutch is the problem. When you're at speed, and certainly when you're driving fast, it's great. But when you're slow and you're stopped and you're trying to creep through traffic, it has kind of an on-off catch point. It's harder to kind of ride it through simple traffic situations than it is the other cars in this test. Jumping out of the EcoBoost Mustang into the Fiesta ST is kind of a riot because this car weighs almost 1,000 pounds less. This is not the EcoBoost Mustang's little brother. It's more like that kid that the parents had right before the older brother went to college. It's the infant brother. But I never cease to be amazed at how just instant and fun this Fiesta ST can be.
It's so nimble. The way it snakes and weaves through these corners. Right there, add throttle. You think, was that rear-wheel drive? For the slightest moment, your brain is going to tell you that this car is rear-wheel drive.
There is no doubt this is front-wheel drive after you've been in the EcoBoost Mustang. I mean, even though this hides that really well, it is still clearly being driven through the front wheels. You can feel it in the steering wheel and you can feel it in the rotation, but this just handles itself so incredibly well. Yeah, when you come in a little hot, definitely understeer. But if you put your foot into it, it solves it, and it kind of tries to rotate the back around, and it really is incredibly neutral for a front-wheel drive car.
And then you finish the corner and you think, okay, indeed, what just happened? This is a front-wheel drive car, I know it. And then you take the next corner, and it does it again. That is just, it's wicked.
This is a small car. It is an economy car that's been beefed up to be sporty. All of those things are true. It is even, yes, a front-wheel drive car, which is less than ideal for a sporting feel. However, I kind of defy you to drive a Fiesta ST hard on a road you love and not end up smiling. This car is just a laugh.
I feel like what Ford has put together in this car makes it the friendliest to any driving style. But what's great about it is the better a driver you are, the more you can extract from this car and kind of make it do things you never thought possible in a front-wheel drive car. I mean, I have kind of been against front-wheel drive for the longest time, and I would say I've got to get over that personally. And you should too, because after driving this, all that goes out the window.
The WRX has a sharper steering rack than the Mustang, but not as sharp as the other two little guys, and it is probably the least fun on a canyon road. As the only all-wheel drive, it does reveal some understeer, and it certainly doesn't have the balance of the other guys. There's definitely body roll here. It feels like it's rolling more than the others, but it's very taut. It's a controlled lean. It's not sloppy at all.
The other thing to consider is actually where you live. I'm talking about the kind of driving you do that makes you love one car or another.
Obviously, if you bang around off-road, if you go camping, if you run around in the snow, this is your car. Now, I'm not a person that says you have to get all-wheel drive for all weather. You have to get good tires, but it's certainly not all about your drive wheels. It isn't as much fun on dry pavement as the other guys, but it is awfully eager.
I could debate you the dynamics of these cars endlessly, honestly, and that is because of price and the way the car makes power. I know this isn't all the time, but the WRX could make a great case for Thursday afternoon driving fun, just because. I mean, from puttering along to flying through corners, squeeze the throttle and just keep cranking over, and it just goes.
And I hate to say this, but in the current version, I would take a WRX over an STI. I mean, the amount of value for money here and the ease of use of this engine over the old engine in that STI makes me prefer this car. The party trick of the handling is the fact that there's so much easy power underfoot, you can claw yourself out of the corner. It does want to understeer, but that all-wheel drive wants to really help you out and solve that problem.
It's really kind of fun for car placement and feeling all-wheel drive. I mean, a proper split. How fun is that?
One of the most significant things to notice in the FRS is the difference in steering feel versus the Mustang. Steering rack here is far sharper than it is in the Mustang. But even though they're both electric, this has better feel.
Nothing about the steering, nothing about the feel is like the WRX in terms of that sort of twangy return to center connected to a rubber band like the STI and a little bit like the WRX. This car is just so rock solid and planted, and it's so low.
But in the world of like the Miata, the S2000, the Lotus Elise, the FRS is a car that is about maintaining speed, even through the corners. It took you a while to get to speed, but you can really hang on in this. Now, in this TRD version, it's got 18s instead of 17s, and it got rid of those terrible Eco Michelin tires and now has Pilot Super Sports on it. This car with great grip is a revelation because you can now just take corners even faster. Everything stays in line, you're not going to lose the back, it just sticks to the road. You feel plugged into the FRS, and then the FRS feels plugged into the earth. Now with this TRD package on it, this Scion FRS becomes a just over $30,000 car, and it's actually hard to recommend this car at 30 grand. I say get yourself a base one. Get yourself a $25,000 FRS. Heck, get yourself a couple-year-old one and spend 18 or 20. Then tune it as you want. Slowly build up to it, because the truth is the base car, with the exception of the tires, is a whole lot of fun.
But the tactile sensations and what these upgraded wheels and tires have done, it seems like all is forgiven when you're chucking this car through the corner and compressing your rib cage into the seat here. And I love the overall balance of this car. But this one thing the car does so well is hateful the rest of the time. On a freeway, driving around town, anytime else, I'm really not a huge fan of it. But it is a great driver's car.
The grip in this, it's so confidence-inspiring. Corners that you sometimes wonder about taking at high speeds in other cars. You get up to that speed and just hang on to it in the FRS. It just rockets through a corner with so little roll and great communicative grip. Here I actually feel a steering linkage between me and the road. And I like this steering feel significantly more than the Mustang. You do normal on your mode and you do comfort on your steering feel, everything just becomes very loose. And if you're doing a road trip or you're a person that likes to just kind of hang out, then maybe that'll be attractive. I can't make that work for me. It makes this car actually now just feel big and a little bit sloppy. But you take the mode and you go to at least Sport Plus, and you take the steering and you go, I actually prefer normal, frankly, than the Sport. I think the Sport is just too hard. But you go to normal and this car feels pretty good. And if you crank up the steering effort from comfort to normal to Sport, it just gets harder at the hub. It doesn't actually increase the info at all.
It's a little bit vague because, again, we're dealing with a heavy car, but it's dramatically improved. And I feel like it's direct. Where other cars do have more steering feel, this car is no slouch. It's through the turns I'd like a little bit more crisp feel, but I'm not unhappy about it.
Unfortunately, the problem with the EcoBoost for me is the weight. It's still a 35, almost 3,600 pound car, which makes it nearly 1,000 pounds heavier than that Fiesta and the FRS, and you can feel that. That never really goes away. Now, it doesn't undermine the agility of this car. This is actually a car you can move pretty quick down a back road, but it never feels small or quick and light on its feet. It just feels very capable.
It's still a big car. I mean, I'm still looking out over this gigantic hood, and compared to these other cars, this feels and is the largest of the group. But suddenly, it's feeling just as nimble as everything else. So I'm kind of wondering how that's possible. Well, a big part of that recipe is the independent rear. As you know, Ford has finally ditched the solid rear axle and gone with independent rear suspension, which has also transformed the character of this car.
And this is a surprisingly bumpy road. It has actually a lot of mid-corner bumps, and it really showcases how much the independent rear suspension has settled the back end of this car. There's no hopping around when you go over these bumps. You just stay right in your line.
But that car is gripping harder. It kind of feels boss-like. We were very impressed by that car. Your trade-offs here are a little bit lighter front end, and I think that's contributing to this hustleability. It's not a word, but in terms of hustleability, I'm going to stick with that word for now. It doesn't give up anything. We're driving out of the canyon yesterday. I'm following Todd. I'm in the Mustang, and he's chucking this thing through corners. I did not feel like he was leaving me at any point. I could easily catch back up, and I'm in a car that's 900 pounds heavier. The recipe is so similar on a larger scale, but there's more horsepower. Here's me saying willingly, I would pay more money for the Mustang, even though, yes, it's heavier, it's not quite as raw and buttoned down, but I gave up no ground when we were driving both of those cars. As a matter of fact, some corners, I felt like I could push even harder than the FRS.
The Fiesta and the WRX are more versatile than this FRS. And the Mustang feels nicer. So what kind of driver are you? Because the analog, organic connection in this car, that's what you're paying for. That's why you get this.
Has Ford done it? I kind of think they have. That's a yes. I like this car. It feels a bit more insulated than the others, these other choices that we've got today. Now in the Mustang, I don't feel like it's as easy to drive. I feel like you do have to work for it. But you know, that's okay, because none of us are always driving like this all the time. Having a little bit more sound deadening, but still combining it with this drivability, this hustleability, chuckability, whatever kind of word you want to call it, it's all right.
So here we are, enthusiast cars, around $25,000, $30,000, and the problem is that world now is a tough market, and into that market steps this car, the EcoBoost 4-cylinder turbo Mustang. But this is a greatest hits show. I mean, you've watched this and you've seen us talk about the FRS, the WRX, we've talked about the Fiesta ST. These are cars we like. These are cars a lot of people like. That's difficult water for this one.
That's a great point. Not only that, but this car has stepped into the tuning world. You realize that?
Yeah,
I mean,
very
you
true.
could tune any of these cars. You could tune any prior Mustang, of course.
Yeah.
But now this is almost like it's specifically designed to be tuned that way.
Yeah.
Even though
Todd and I have to drive these cars as they were built. As the manufacturer said, you know what, we're finished, this is it, drive it and buy it as is. Whatever you do to it, we could tune these cars endlessly and make
and people will.
one dynamically better than the other in every area. But now what we have to consider is, in this group of cars we love, this car's price.
That's true. I mean, as spec'd with this press version, and of course the press vehicles are always over-spec'd.
Yeah,
this is a
true.
$38,000 four-cylinder Mustang. No, I'm sorry, no. At that point, you get yourself the 5-liter. You move into the GT.
Might as well.
Yeah, definitely. You can take this car, please. I did it. Get online, spec the turbo Mustang. You can find it for 30 grand. At 30 grand, it's legitimate. At 38, now you've got a whole other round of competition.
So at this point, I debated numbering these cars, 1 through 4. This is the car I like most, this is the car I like least, because we like things about all these cars. As you said, this is the greatest hits album, and now the Mustang is joining. So how long does the debate go?
Well, a while, but I will have to say that in this group, for me, this still kind of comes last, and it's 2 reasons. Spec like this, it's very expensive. Now, you can spec it better, but the big thing is, among these 4, this car feels big. Now, drive this Mustang next to a Camaro, it's going to feel light and agile. But come on, the Fiesta ST and the FRS are almost 1,000 pounds lighter than this car. The WRX with all-wheel drive is lighter than this car. Where did the weight go?
I kind of felt like I leaned towards more of the light, nimble handling of the Fiesta ST.
I definitely do. I definitely do.
But I warmed to this car. I didn't think I'd come into this review liking it as much as I did, honestly. I thought I would like it okay. But it's really grown on me. It's taken a while, admittedly.
Yeah.
But it's really grown.
This car, I get in the FRS, I like it instantly. I get in the EcoBoost, I like it eventually. So I kind of have to listen to that about me, because the truth is, there's not a bad car here. I know that sounds ridiculous, but we've got the greatest hits, and then this comes to it. I think you've got to be a kind of buyer for this car. And I'm not that buyer, but they have done a good job.
I thought, do we have to rate these 1 through 4? Do we have to rate it, this is the best, here's the worst? We're going to keep talking about this. I'm sure we'll keep podcasting about it.
We've been talking about this for days. We're going to continue to talk about it.
There's
an ongoing argument here.
Which car should I get? We're going to say, well, what kind of driver are you? How much money do you have?
Yeah.
What are you willing to do to it? All of those things. So the debate rages.
Yes, and join us.
On this refamiliarization drive, I've kind of relegating this car to a fun track toy or just a fun weekend car. I can't see myself really owning it.
We drive a lot of cars, and there definitely are times when we're in a car thinking, okay, so what was the clutch like in this, and what do I need to do here to make it work as well as it should? None of that's necessary on the FRS. Maybe it's just me, but when I get in this car, I so easily integrate to everything that I'm supposed to do and how to get the most out of it, that it just makes this car something I love almost the minute I pull away.
The WRX is kind of like a Corvette. It's value-based, right? It's so much going on for the price. But in this group, I want something a little more, and my sensibilities are going to both the Ford products.
This is the car that makes you wonder why the EcoBoost is so expensive. Because this one with everything on it is 29 grand. Now, it's not the most beautiful interior ever. We've covered that before. And compared to how stark the Fiesta and the FRS are, this feels like a nice interior. It certainly has the most room. This is an all-purpose, all-family usable car, and the others can't really brag that.
I'm going to say I would take this car over the FRS just slightly, because of the turbo punch, because it's so surprising. The FRS feels predictable, it feels very controllable. So does this one, but there's something more to this one. There's extra character.
If you can deal with the size of the Fiesta ST because it is small, if you can deal with the economy interior because it is cheap, if you can handle these things, then the Fiesta ST is such a lightning in a bottle moment for cars. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is very true that this is one of those cars that's just fun all the time.
When we're done filming, what is the car you just want to be in? What do you just want to, finish driving out of the canyon, but still drive home on the freeway? For me, it isn't the FRS. I could see myself in the Fiesta, and the WRX is okay, but I want to be in this car. I want to be in the Mustang.
We've both been surprised when you hop into the Mustang. Out of any of the other three, this car feels significantly larger, both in weight and just in scale. And you kind of have to ask yourself, what kind of car do I like? Because there's no way around it. This is a big car.